Hi folks, Dave Machado here, the Lawyer Chef, here helping you cook good food fast. Today's episode is going to be an absolutely delicious one. What is it going to be? It's going to be my favorite Korean dish called bulgogi. Bulgogi is a delicious meat dish that incorporates some delicious vegetables and some delicious sauces. We're going to make a beautiful marinade that is really kind of the star of the show along with the meat. So first thing we'll do is let's get started with that. And in order to do that, I need to thinly slice half of an onion. So why do we want it thinly sliced? Well, let's talk about bulgogi in general. Bulgogi dates back to 37 BC. That's right, 37 BC. This is a really old dish. Why has it stuck around so long? Because it's delicious. That's why. I'll tell you what. So bulgogi very literally in Korean translates to fire meat. So the word bul means fire and gogi means meat. So together, of course, it's fire meat. So now we go back to the onion. And why are we slicing up the onion really thin? Once we slice it up really thin, I'm going to cut it up into thirds. And there we go. Okay? And then I'm just going to kind of separate the onion a little bit. I don't want it all kind of stuck together either in the sauce or in the pan. So I'm going to grab the onion and I'm going to put it in the bowl that we're making the sauce in. So why do we slice it thin? We slice it thin because the meat is going to cook very quickly. So with the meat cooking very quickly, we don't want to wait for the onions to cook because we don't want our meat to burn. Even though we're eating fire meat, we don't want the meat burnt. We want it tasty and delicious, and that's what we're going to get with the thinly sliced onions. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some scallions here, and I've got 5. So I got 5 scallions, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the tops off. Okay, I'm going to cut the tops off, and we're still going to use the tops, don't worry. And we're going to use primarily for the cooking process, we're going to use, I got 3 more from a dish that I cooked earlier. So I'm just going to use the bottom of those 3. So why are we using these separate from the tops? Well, pretty simple actually. We're going to put in the tops. We're going to put in the tops after the dish is almost completely finished. So we're gonna cook these. We're gonna make these really small, and we're gonna use that, and it's gonna cook in with the meat versus at the end. And why is that? Well, because these have a really big punch of flavor that we don't want at the end. And why wouldn't we want a big punch of flavor? Well, it's that raw onion punch of flavor, and we don't want that at the very end of the dish. So because when we put the other ones in towards the end, they're not going to cook all the way. And the reason they're not is because we're putting them in at the end. Well, when we put them in at the end, they're still going to have some really nice onion flavor. They're not going to completely wilt as if they would when you cook the entire process with them. And they give us this really, it's a bit of a distinct different flavor from the bottom of the scallion. So now you'll notice that I like to leave about an inch. Okay, I like to leave about an inch at the end of each scallion. Why? I'm not throwing them away. Don't worry, we're not throwing anything away here, right? So the reason why I do that is because I'll put this aside, and then I put them in my garden, right? So within about, a week's time, week and a half, I will have full-grown scallions again. So, if you have a garden, depending on where you live, it's springtime in Virginia. I'll go out and I'll put these in my garden, today or tomorrow. I'll stick them in the fridge in a baggie, and I will go ahead and put them out in the garden they'll grow. It'll be great. Don't make the mistake of pulling them out and chopping them up again. Grab your kitchen shears. Cut out what you want. And then, let them grow back up. They'll grow back 10, 12 times easily. You'll have them throughout the whole season. It's going to be great. So I am going to set my cutting board aside because I'm not going to cut anything at the moment. But I will tell you this, hey, if you're remodeling your kitchen, get one of these sprayers. They're amazing. All right. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to put in about 6.5 tablespoons of soy sauce. Okay. And we got 3 tablespoons of water. Roughly about 2.5 tablespoons of rice wine vinegar. Now we have what I consider to be one of the stars of the show in this sauce is some sesame oil, and I want to get every bit of sesame oil. So I grab my silicone spoon and I make sure that it is all in there. Now, I'm going to put some more at the end because a lot of it's going to cook out while we cook on the wok, right? So I don't want, I still want some more of that flavor. So I'll put some more at the end. All right. So now I have about 3 heaping tablespoons of garlic and about 2 heaping tablespoons of ginger. Now, I know I've said this a bunch of times before. If you don't like garlic, get yourself checked out because something's wrong with you. But if you don't like garlic as much as I do, don't use as much garlic. Use 2 tablespoons instead of 3. If you like ginger, use more ginger. Use 3 tablespoons instead of 2. It's not going to ruin the dish. It's going to enhance it to the flavor that you like. And when you're making it in your kitchen, that's how you want it. And you want it how you like it. Now, here we finally have 3 tablespoons of an Asian garlic chili paste, which you can find in most grocery stores. Most big grocery stores will have this in their international section. And it is a very, very tasty sauce. That's where you're getting most of the heat from that garlic chili paste. Now, so we've got all that in here. Now, bulgogi also has a little bit of a hint of sweetness, and it's a very distinct sweetness. So what we're going to do first, we'll start off with 2 tablespoons of just regular old white sugar. Okay, and then we have 2 tablespoons of honey, and I want to make sure I get all that, so I'm getting my silicone spoon again. Now, this happens to be buckwheat honey. What kind of honey should you use? Whatever kind of honey you have in your house. There's no reason to go out and spend money to make a dish when you have similar or same ingredients at home. So just use what you got. I use buckwheat honey because I have buckwheat honey. There are other times where I have, different kinds of honey, and I'll just use whatever it is that I have. So now we come to the start of the show where we get where bulgogi gets some of its unique sweetness. Have you guys ever seen this at the grocery store and wondered why are they putting an apple in some kind of a foam wrapping? Well, I can't answer that because this is not an apple. This is a Korean pear, and it is absolutely delicious. It's very sweet, and you get some of that unique sweetness in the dish from this Korean pear. And you see how big this thing is? If you see them any smaller than this, don't buy them. You want the nice big ones. The little ones, they've shriveled up, they're old, they're not good. The skin will be nice and soft and whatever, if they're too small. You don't want that, soft. You want it to be nice, and you almost want it to feel tough, like it's not ready to eat. This is absolutely delicious. So we're going to use about half of it. What are you going to do? Chop it up, put half in the... No. So what we're going to do is we are going to peel half of the pear, and we're going to put half of the pear in the dish. Now you got to be careful, right? Because like I said, you want the skin nice and tough, and it is tough. And if you're not careful, you could end up cutting yourself. And I don't want you to cut yourself. So I'm going to be very careful with this. And I use my potato peeler, and I get the skin off that I want off. And I just want, like I said, half of it. There we go. And let's see here. Is that about half? I think that's about half. I'm going to go a little bit more on this side. So now, I wish you could see how juicy this is. It's just dripping onto the counter as I clean this. So, what are we going to do? We're just going to cut it and stick it in there? No, we already said no. We're going to grate it, all right? I'm going to grab my cheese grater, all right? Don't use the fat holes. Don't use the tiny holes, and don't use a slicer. Use the medium holes, all right? This is what's going to get you the right size. It's the perfect size, and we're just going to grate it like we would anything else. And see how that pear is just kind of grating down into that bowl? That's what you want. This is going to be delicious. This is what gives it that unique, very unique sweetness, okay? And we're only going to use half of this pear. Now, if you can't find an Asian pear, you should be able to find them in a lot of the big grocery stores. And if you can't find them in the big grocery stores, if there's an Asian market, obviously you'll find them there. If there's an international market, you'll find them there. And they're really good. But if for whatever reason you can't find them, okay, and there we go. So that's roughly half. And I'm going to set this aside because I'm going to use it later when it comes to plating. All right. So, here we are. We've got everything that we want in our sauce. And let's just mix it up. All right. Here we go. We're mixing this up. We're making, oh, boy, I'm making a mess today. All right. Always keep the kitchen clean. It makes it easier to cook. Especially when you're done, the last thing you want to do is clean your kitchen. It's already done. Okay, so I've got my sauce all mixed up. Let's talk about meat. First of all, I'm going to grab my meat, and then we'll talk about that and different kinds of meat we can use in this. All right. So I like to use shaved ribeye. Okay, you can use shaved sirloin. You could use shaved flank steak. You could use pretty much any kind of beef you want. But the difference is, actually I'm not going to touch it because I don't want to have to wash my hands, and you don't want to touch raw protein because you don't want to cross-contaminate. All right, so the reason I use shaved meat versus thinly sliced meat is that if I use shaved meat, it's going to cook faster, right? And we're cooking good food fast, 30 minutes or less. We can't do a 30-minute cook with thicker meat. It's number one, it's going to take a little bit longer to cook. And number two, if the thicker that the meat is, especially depending on the cut of meat that you use, we're going to have to put it back in the fridge after it's been mixed in with the sauce to tenderize. This marinade has tenderizing properties where it will soften the meat. It will make it nice and tender for you, but it's got to sit for 1 to 2 hours in the fridge, maybe longer, right? But if we're trying to do this in 30 minutes or less, we can't do it by having to stick the meat back in the fridge for 1 to 2 hours. So that's why I like it shaved, because it makes it faster in the cook process. And that's why I cut the onions. That's why I cut the onions thinner. And you're going to see this is going to be absolutely delicious. It's going to be very quick. And oh, by the way, let's talk about what we pair it with. Well, we're obviously going to pair it with rice. And I started the rice before I started filming, just because it takes a little bit longer, maybe. And it's gonna be finished just before the meat is finished. And that way, we can be ready to eat, and we can plate, and we can get this all done very quickly. I'm going to get my wok warmed up. I'll be right back. Okay, so the fire's going under the wok. Now, as we were talking about earlier, this is a dish that dates back to 37 BC. That's a long time. Well, originally they weren't cooking it on skewers on a gas, or they weren't cooking it shaved on a gas grill, right? They were cooking thinly sliced meat on skewers over an open flame. Hence the name fire meat, right? Wrong. It was originally called myeokjuk. Now, I apologize to my Korean friends if I've misspelled that, but I think I got it right. So this was originally cooked on skewers over an open flame. Eventually, it became known as bulgogi, and bulgogi is actually from, back in the 90s, I think it was back in the 90s where they, kind of said that that's when it was kind of like a given, and most would agree that bulgogi was the most popular Korean dish. And this is even amongst Koreans, but certainly in the US. And it's just very delicious, folks, and that's why it's stuck around for as long as it has, and that's why it's not only popular and a staple in Korea, but in the States, so many people really love the dish. So what else can we pair it with? Well, there are a few other things that we can pair it with. But the first thing I'm going to do before we talk about pairing is my wok should be hot. I'm going to put a little bit of avocado oil to coat the pan on the bottom, and then we're going to put our meat in, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about pairings. One of the ways that we can tell that our pan is hot enough is that the oil is moving around nice and freely. I've heard someone refer to it as the oil dancing in the pan, and it's certainly not a bolero, that's for sure. Anyway, I digress. Let's get the meat. We'll put the meat in there, and then we'll talk about pairings. All right. Let's get. All right. The other way you can tell your pan is hot enough, and I've said this a bunch of times too, is you got to hear the sizzle when you put the food in, and we definitely heard the sizzle. All right. So what else could we pair our bulgogi with? I'm going to get my cutting board back, and I'm going to start cutting up the tops of those scallions. So pair it with rice. It's a good pairing with rice. We could also put some lettuce on the plate. We can make some lettuce wraps with the bulgogi. They're absolutely delicious. And the other thing, here what we're doing, okay, so I'm cutting these on a bias, which is basically just fancy for cutting it at an angle. And they're not too big, but they're not too small either. And the nice thing about that is we're going to get that great flavor with every bite. We're going to put this in towards the end of the cooking process. So what else can we pair this with? Well, how about some kimchi? That's a very popular dish, obviously, but why aren't we using it? Well, in order to make kimchi from scratch, it's going to take several days to ferment and become the beautiful, delicious dish that it is. Now, I don't have that kind of time, and I'm trying to show you how to cook a meal in 30 minutes or less. Can't do that if I got to wait 5, 6 days, 7 days for it to completely ferment. That's not, doesn't make sense, right? So we're not going to do that. Now, could have just bought it at the store and put it on the dish. I could have done that too, but I'm not gonna, because that's cheating. And I'm gonna show you how to make these things 30 minutes or less. And that doesn't mean that there are times that, okay, we got some thicker ones here. that there are times where we're going to take a little bit of shortcut, maybe use something that may or may not be frozen. Put that in there. And the reason why we're going to do that, right, is because we're trying to do 30 minutes or less. But at the end of the day, we want as many fresh ingredients as we can, okay? So, all right, so we got that. Actually, all right, let's go check on the meat. See, folks, this cooks very quickly. Just kind of separate it, make sure that everything is nicely coated and getting warmed up, because this is going to cook very quickly. All right, so we talked about lettuce, we talked about kimchi, and of course rice. Let's talk about the rice. That's important. So the rice, I like to use jasmine rice. I think it's delicious, it smells good. But what's important when you're going to cook a long grain, a medium grain, jasmine, short grains, you're going to want to use 2 cups of water to 1 cup of rice. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. But more importantly, you're going to want to rinse out the rice a few times to get rid of that extra starch, which is going to make it just clump and just not be really tasty and delicious. So, what else can you do with a bulgogi? Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to think of ideas of what I'm going to do with the rest of this Korean pear, because they're delicious and it makes sense to use it on the plate. Why would I use the rest of the Korean pear on the plate? Well, number one, I think it'll make it look nice. But number two, more importantly, I think it's going to give some great flavor. It also gives you some crunch, all right? It gives you a little bit of crunch with some sweetness to it, and that's going to help counteract the heat if you don't like heat so much, right? So when you get that heat, that spicy heat in the back of your mouth, when you take a bite of this Korean pear, that's going to tame that a little bit. And that's really one of the reasons why I like to use it because not everybody likes spicy, and that's okay. And if you don't like spicy, don't use the 3 tablespoons of the chili garlic. Use 2, maybe use 1. It'll be okay. It's still going to be delicious. But you got to make something that you like to eat. Let's go look at the meat again. Oh, look at that. It's caramelizing. Yeah, that's going to be absolutely delicious. And this is almost done, folks. So when the rice is done, this is going to be done. So we're going to be done pretty quick here. So the next time I go over there, I'm going to be adding the scallions, and I'm going to mix them in. It'll be the last time I mix it in. The rice will be done here in a minute, and I'm going to go ahead and start working on this pear. All right. Okay. So I got the pear. I'm going to flip it on its side, and I'm just going to make some nice thin slices. And you're going to see how beautiful these nice big slices of pear are going to be on that plate. It's going to be absolutely delicious. And you don't want them too thick, right? You don't want them too thick. So this is probably enough, but beautiful Korean pear. Sweet, delicious, love it. All right. So I'm going to put this off to the side with my knife. I'm going to wipe down my island a little bit. And for those of you who don't know, purpose you wipe down the counter, or excuse me, the purpose I have these wet paper towels under my cutting board is because it serves as like a piece of rubber and it keeps my cutting board from moving around. And then when I move my cutting board, now I've got something to wipe down the counter with if you've misplaced or put your cooking rag away. All right? So let's put this in there. Oh, look at that, it's caramelizing. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be delicious. There's that. We'll mix these in. I'm going to turn it off now. Look at that. That's beautiful. Let me grab a plate. All right. So we've got our plate. I'm going to use a round plate this time for this one because I think it's going to be really beautiful. We'll put this nice mound of rice in the middle, and then we'll put some meat around it, and then I'm going to put some of that Korean pear around it, and it's going to look beautiful and it's going to be delicious. But more importantly, when we get a dish, it's got to be delicious to our eyes. We eat with our eyes before we eat with our mouth. If it's beautiful on the plate, we can't wait to put it in our mouth. But, you know, if it just looks like a bunch of slop on the plate, you're not going to want to eat it, right? If somebody came to you in a restaurant and gave you a plate that was unappealing to the eye, you wouldn't want to eat it, right? Well, then let's do the same thing at home and make really nice, beautiful plates. Let me go get the rice. I'm going to put it in the bowl. It's going to give me the right quantity of rice, and it's also going to make it look nice. I'll show you. All right, I'm back with the rice. Now, I can put the bowl right there. I can put the meat around it. I could do any number of different things. I could leave it like that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to make it look really, really pretty. So what I want to do is grab my bowl, put it upside down on to the center of the plate. So you don't have to make sure it's exactly on the center of the plate, but you want it to be as close to the center of the plate as possible. Again, it's going to look absolutely beautiful. And, you know, I can leave it like that, but I'm not gonna plate it like that. I'm gonna take it out. But before I do that, I'm gonna put the bulgogi around the rice because I think it's gonna look pretty awesome. So we grab a set of tongs. All right. And we got our bulgogi, which looks delicious. And for those of you who are concerned about my counter, don't worry about it. Granite can handle hot, can handle heat, can handle hot pans with no issues at all. Okay? All right. So I am just kind of like putting some meat around the rice. And don't worry, I'm going to wipe this down in a minute. I know it's getting everywhere. I want it to be a pretty dish. Okay? All right. So, let's talk about money. All right? This dish, I used about 1.5 pounds of meat, and I got the meat on sale, okay? But, so I got the meat on sale, but I've done the math. Okay, let's clean this off, right? So I've done the math. I can get very easily 5 servings out of this dish. 5 servings out of everything that I made. Okay, so I'm just going to start placing the pear around the meat like this. Okay? Look at that. Yes, I like it. Yeah, that's going to be delicious, and it's going to be beautiful. My eyes are already loving it and wanting for me to put some in my mouth. So, now I'll take, oh, the steam's making that soft. All right. Oh, look what I did. All right. So sometimes you just got to grab a fork to help you out. There it is. Okay. So now you just kind of adjust and push the meat in a little bit. Yeah. That's delicious, folks. It looks delicious. My eyes are calling it delicious. We're ready to go. All right. So, what did I forget to do? Hold on. Forget to add a little bit of sesame oil to it. That's all right. We'll do a little bit in here. A little drop here, a little drop there. Yeah. And I'm going to put some in when we're done. All right. Finally, the last thing that we need to do with this bulgogi is we need to garnish it with some sesame seeds, which is very traditional in Korean cooking with bulgogi. And there you go, folks. So one more time, I talked about the math and the cost and all that. I didn't really get into any detail. So I got just under $25 into everything I've made tonight. So what does that translate into? Well, 5 to 6 servings. That's less than $5 a plate. Look at this beautiful plate. What's there not to love here? This is absolutely a beautiful dish that you go to any restaurant, and this is going to be somewhere between $15 and $20, probably about 17-ish, okay? And you'd pay it every day of the week because this is going to be absolutely delicious. So in these tight financial times, you know, not only am I showing you that you can cook good food fast in 30 minutes or less, we can do it economically, okay? So if you got a family of 4, a family of 5, you know, you can make this dish, you know, for less than $5 a plate. That's amazing. So if you like this dish, if you like what I'm showing you, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell notification button so it'll let you know every time I put a new episode up. Let's try this. All right, let's see what we got. Okay, let's see. Got some rice and some beef. Oh, wow. That's amazing, folks. It's absolutely, woo! There's the heat coming in from behind. Whoa, love it. All right. We also talked about, I'm going to grab my lettuce leaf. All right, we talked about making a lettuce wrap maybe. Okay. So first, let's put some rice in there. Get some critical mass in there. Some base, a base layer, base support. All right, we'll do a little bit more. All right. Now that we got that in, let's put a little bit of meat in to go with all that rice. Some more here. And you know what? Why not? Let's put some pears in. All right, I had to stab that one. That's all right. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of fold over here, kind of come over here, and over here I'm going to take a bite. Oh, wow. Oh, wow, that's great. You got the crunch from the lettuce and the pear. You get the sweetness from that pear, and then you get that heat that comes from behind, but the pear kind of quickly tames it down. But it is delicious, folks. I'm Dave Machado, the lawyer chef. If I can do it, you can do it too. Let's cook some good food fast together.